Okay, so I want to talk about my design journey for my logo. So what I've been doing is I've been using Gemini to prompt a bunch of different logos. So far, probably spent about a couple hours on getting many different logos. And so what the easiest way to visualize this is actually right here. What I've done was I went into Gemini, I input a bunch of prompt. It gave me and I selected Canvas, which gives you other tools like creating docs and apps. And then it creates a file, not this particular one, but I'm just showing you as an example. And then you could either create infographics, website, things of that nature. There's a couple other things in here that this is not really relevant right now. So what I did was I went ahead and created a website, and it will generate in here with code or preview. The easier way for me to keep track of all these things though is actually copy the HTML code, paste it into Google Sites. So if you haven't tried Google Sites yet, I highly encourage it, and I'll do a separate video on that. But essentially, you would just add a add a section, and then you just embed, and then you would type in your copy and paste your code here and hit next. And so that's basically what I've done. I've got a bunch of these different sections here. Um, in HTML, they're called divs, but for the average person listening to this right now, they're really just sections. And then you just go hit publish. So now you have a live website that you can share with your friends and whatnot, and refer back to. So just remember to label your section so it's easy to refer to. This is kind of a hacky way to just get something done quickly. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll get you 80-90% there. And so after a couple hours of prompting, I've got a bunch of different designs. These are the 10 that I've weeded out that are left over, I guess, of contestants. And then what I've done is rather than visualizing it in a long-ish rectangle, I've asked Gemini to give me 3 different versions. Their as-is version is actually a little bit off because the rectangular shape that it originally presented was vertical, and now this is horizontal. But then the other formats that I've asked for are squares and circular. So most importantly, the circular one is really ideal for how your logo might present itself on Instagram, on TikTok, or your Gmail profile icon, because all of those are round. So it was important for me to visualize that in this format because the placement of the ampersand, for example, might look fine in a square block, but here in this round shape, it's more accentuated and it just sticks out a little bit wider and longer than I like in the third line, for example. And then other designs with a border, for example, this gets cut off, and I didn't love that. And if I were to shrink the border, uh, small enough to fit within the rounded circle, then the font becomes really small. So I have another trade-off to make there. So that's one reason why I got rid of um, the square. And then ultimately, I settled on some form of a design with a separator. Now, the separator is interesting because this particular design calls for a left aligned design with all the fonts aligned on the left side. And I thought, again, viewing this in a circular form, I'm able to see that, hey, I actually like the word fit more center to the circle than the fit being left aligned, because now this feels very heavy on the left, even more so than in a square form. So it's really important to see your digital assets in multiple ways, and Gemini really did a great job getting me there very quickly. Again, for all of these designs, I spent about a couple hours to get there. So for somebody who doesn't have a digital design background, designing logo and all that, this is huge. Now I have experience in terms of working on websites and doing a little bit of UI and UX on the front end in just working as a product manager in conjunction with other design team members. So I could carry on a conversation in terms of design on a high level, but I wouldn't say that I'm skilled or trained in any design philosophies. And I wouldn't say that I'm doing this professionally day in day out. So again, coming from that background, this is super helpful. Where Gemini begins to fail, though, however, as good as it is, there are limitations to these design tools. These general LLM tools are great for getting you, I would say, 80 to 90% there. That last 10 to 20% of fine tuning can often be very tricky. So, for example, some of the things that I noticed when I want to continue to fine tune this. For example, um, the logo for form fit gains. I started with this, so this is the current design. The bars here do not line up with the text. So my gut told me was, oh, maybe I want it to be aligned. And so I asked for that. And then I thought for just for entertainment sake, maybe we should also see a version where that lines up with fit. But if I were to hold a ruler up against uh, the left edge of the letter F here for fit, it actually does not truly line up with the separator. Um, and the same was true when I was working with this, the wider version of this. And I easily spent half an hour to an hour just trying to prompt uh, this comparison here. And I thought that was a lot of time that I did not expect. Then I wanted Gemini to help me with a horizontal design. So I thought, well, for a logo banner, for example, or if I wanted to print something horizontally on a sleeve of a long sleeve shirt or something like that, I thought that a horizontal format would work great. Except what happened was that the logo kept coming back with these bars that were sticking out way past the top of the letters. This is actually a better version than some of the earlier versions that I've had. And then in some iterations, it gave me a rounded top and a rounded bottom. And that was also different from what we needed because it should really line up. I think, especially in this case, it should line up with the top and bottom of the text. Then came the next bug that we ran into, which was right now the spacing here in this particular version, this white space looks more or less even or symmetrical. In some versions of this, I just could not, for the life of me, get um, get the perfect alignment. And then, just as a horizontal format, something else that comes to light is the width of the text. So form obviously has 4 letters compared to fit, which is just 3. Not to mention that the I in the fit is a lot skinnier than any of the other 4 letters in form. And then gains is 5 letters. So at the end of the day, these texts are not going to line up. However, then the question became, if I were to view this chunk of the word as one block, if you will, and this chunk of the word as another block, is block 1 supposed to be somewhat proportional to block 2? And does it come with a trade-off of smaller white spaces on the left side of this separator compared to the right side of the separator? So where do we, or how do we fine tune this, I guess, became the next objective. And that was a very challenging task for Gemini, because eventually it was smart, and that it tried to do the right thing by giving me different tools to debug this and to fine tune this. And it was smart to try and give me a analyzer tool. Let me see if I can pull that up here. It even created a optical alignment studio that I've screenshot here. Essentially, what it did was, or was trying to do, was give me the power to adjust these different elements left or right to shift to the perfect spacing that I want. The first version of this alignment tool only allowed me to shift form, fit, or gain, and did not have the separator. So I went ahead and I asked for, hey, can I control the separator also? Okay, it did that. And I said, hey, it'd be really helpful if you labeled how much spacing we have from these gaps. I decided to call it gap one, starting from the left, gap two, gap three, gap four. It did that, at least on the UI. It did not actually count the right pixels, so that was wrong. And then I went ahead and said, well, fit really doesn't need to move. It should just be anchored, centered in the middle. And then I got that. Then I said, it would be really helpful if you gave me a column dimension, measuring from the left to the right of this width here. I was working with Gemini calling these as columns. So column one, kind of like a spreadsheet, column two, and column three. The column calculator never worked. So I went and spent probably 3 hours on debugging these tools, and eventually I said, let's just give up because the features are not working correctly. I know you mean well in trying to help me fine tune here. Um, then I tried a bunch of different things. I've tried all the so-called best practices of prompting. Say, hey, imagine if you were Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives, like if they were in the room here, how would they design this logo? What is mathematically equal may not be balanced to the eyes, because at the end of the day, we're going to have three columns with different spellings of 3 letters, 4 letters, and 5 letters, and they're all different widths. So how do we make this look good? And there's a lot of back and forth and philosophy in terms of how things should look, um, versus how things are calculated mathematically. Got into some technicality with the spacing around each font and how they're presented and rendered on the screen. Whether or not the design, if we were to um, hard code it into pixels, and whether or not that would scale as we put it to print, um, you know, those proportions are going to be different when if we're hard coding it and not doing some sort of mathematical equation to calculate these. So there was a lot of back and forth on all that. Um, at the end of the 3 hours, we couldn't get it right, and I just said, "Hey, Gemini, it looks like we've reached the end of what you can reasonably, capably deliver." Because now we're just seeing bugs after bugs. Like you're giving me designs with separators that are just right in the middle of a letter, and that's not it. Even though you say in your text that this is what you've corrected and you've threw out the old code and then here's a new code, um, but the end result that you're presenting me is wrong. So I said, let's switch tools and let's try something else. So it suggested Imagine from Google, which I've tried and I'm not even going to bother and show you with that. I'm trying Canva, and Canva is unique. Canva has their own AI as well. So here's Canva AI. I'm using the free pro trial for 30 days. Um, and I've asked Gemini to create a prompt for me. And so this is the master prompt. Create a final production ready logo, blah, blah, blah. Brand identity, here's the colors, here's the word, the form, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all of those things. Very detailed prompt. I went ahead and submitted that to Canva, and their AI works very differently. Their AI works more like a designer within Canva, as they should, right? Because Canva, as a brand, they help people design. They help designers design. So it takes more of a artistic approach, if you will, to interpret the prompt, and they throw in their own things in there. So it's giving me stuff that I didn't ask for. Like for example, none of these look anything like my logo that I was working on, which arguably is more simple in that it's just letters and you know characters that you can type on a keyboard. Here, these are actual artistic interpretations and true designs, if you will, You have words with different color, words with different sizes. You have different design elements being put in here. But very quickly, you see if you look closely enough, spellings are wrong, punctuations are wrong. There's an extra T here for no reason. Um, Here, there's an extra comma that I didn't ask for. In this case, the separator is on the right side in both cases. And then here, I don't know what happened here. It looked like a designer gone rogue. So then I said, okay, and then this is kind of a purposeful try because I wanted to give it a text-based only um, input without adding any media for reference. So then the second time around, I created the code, I submitted and attached a logo, and so hopefully their AI can see my logo and say let's see what we're working with. Well, the first the first result was sorry that didn't quite work. Hang tight for a few more and try again. Right? Okay, I tried again in a few minutes. Same prompt, same logo uploaded, and say, hey, there's a connection issue. Go check out canvastatus.com to see if this is even if there's an outage. And of course, I went and there is no problems whatsoever. So somehow their AI decided that there was a system outage. Kind of I don't know, I don't want to say an excuse, but that's the answer provided. All right, so third try. Okay, this is what I came back with. Now, some of these are actually really good designs, and I like this looks quite nice. It's bold, it's modern and hip. So, but if you look at my prompt, it says specifically the output must be clean 2D vector graphics with no 3D effects, no shadows, no gradients. Well, what do we have here? Shadows and gradients. So, overall, my experience with Canva AI is it does some of what you want. If you're looking for a very direct, hey, here is A, B, and C. Now go accomplish my goals for me. Here are the three main objectives, and do exactly as I say. Canva AI will not do that. However, if you are if you're stuck on ideas and you just want to generate a few different concepts to consider, to brainstorm with, I think Canva AI is great for that. So that's my experience so far. What I'm gonna do next is actually I'm gonna upload my logo into an actual file and then try to edit from there. And I'm gonna make that a separate video for that. But hopefully this overview of AI LLM generated logo video has been helpful right now so far, I guess. So I'm gonna stop talking before I continue to ramble on, but hopefully my journey has been useful for you for reference, and if nothing else, at least entertaining. All right, thanks.